Senate bill to ban TikTok. Maybe someone will scroll all the way down to this comment. Probably not. For half a decade, I have lived outside of the US, and I've watched as it has fallen to shit in slow motion. I make a decent chunk of income in use, and this terrifies me. But this move saddens me. There are only so many hours that Congress has to make real decisions. And this is what they spent their time on. Talking about how kids might be influenced by an algorithm when they're being influenced every day by how they might get shot up in math class. Come on, whoa man. This shit is fucking stupid. It's just sad to me. Sad to watch the country I grew up in, the one I went to war for, do this level of stupid shit. That's my $2. Spend it how you want it.
Sadly, it has nothing to do with talking about how kids might be influenced by an algorithm. Because if it did, they would be trying to ban Facebook, Instagram, and other social media services that have the exact same effect as TikTok on children. This is really meant to be a punch in the fight against China. US government does not want any possibility of US citizens' data being in the hands of China, and their questions to Chu made that clear. The narrative of child safety, for example the story about the kid who commits suicide because of their For You page, is being used as a kind of legal pretext so they can ban TikTok.
The U.S. government does not want any possibility of U.S. citizens' data being in the hands of China. Yeah, except that any business can just buy that information. I can buy your day-to-day movements for dirt cheap. I own a non-American company, though I'm still an American citizen, but that isn't a factor, and it is insanely cheap to get information about any American you want. Hell, Bingbot will tell you all about me, what I do for a living and where I live. This is about China, but it is a stupid and pointless zero-point game. This bill would get shot down in 30 seconds for being unconstitutional, especially if the company has an American LLC or corporation, making it a legal entity protected by the Constitution. Further, you'd think Congress would have learned from Prohibition that banning something doesn't work at all. How would you even enforce something like this? Stop people randomly to violate their privacy further and search their phone? Will this be another thing to get arrested for when you have a broken taillight?
TikTok disappearing from tens of millions of iPhones overnight. I have no idea about Androids. Would probably work pretty well. If I had to guess, almost none of those people can jailbreak their iPhone to get it again either. Your option would be to switch to Android and learn to sideload apps, which I think is pretty damn easy these days. The point is not to enforce against individual users, just to remove it from the main distribution channels.
You can freely install apps on your phone. All you need is an Apple computer. It only can be used for a week before you have to install it again. I don't pay Apple a dime and still develop software for iPhones occasionally without any issues. Also, websites are pretty powerful. Apple even allowed websites to send notifications now.
Well, yeah, ByteDance directly takes orders from the Chinese government. Big Tech can also take orders from the American government, but America is bound by the rule of law and isn't actively imprisoning millions in concentration camps, so it's way better.
Speaking at least with my background, foreign adversaries have learned exactly how to weaponize our free and open internet against our own people. Regardless of the fact that our kids are most vulnerable, China's seemingly made a point of outsourcing their most polarizing algorithmic decisions to the rest of the world, but not to their own population, which is essentially a tacit admission of their awareness of the dangers of social media to their own people. At this point, I'd venture that politicians in the U.S. are trying to grasp at whatever they can to mitigate the risk while still maintaining their election chances. Easier to blame China and get re-elected than it is to dump on their own constituents for not monitoring their kids' social media habits. And frankly, I'm okay with that. Even if a parent does their best, there'll be second-hand influences through all the kids raised irresponsibly through their parents, and nothing can be done about that aside from homeschooling or going off-grid, which is unsustainable for nearly everyone. I'm fine with a combination of the bill introduced, plus bills like the one passed in Utah, placing curfews on kids, since parents have proven to be so bad at parenting their own kids as to present the nation with an emergent aggregate risk to national security.
A. The government can do more than one thing at a time. B. There is zero appetite from the GOP for gun control. Until that changes, the status quo persists. C. Information about U.S. citizens, which can be used to manipulate them, being handed over to the Chinese government, is something that the government should be concerned about.
It's worse than you think. This bill isn't really about TikTok. Read the fine print. People caught using a VPN could be thrown in jail for 20 years. It's about giving government unchecked authority to throw people in jail.
Can you point out where the bill says this? I'm not practiced in reading this kind of thing, and struggling to find it.
If the concern is privacy and security, which apply to all social media platforms, then why not pass actual privacy and security laws that would apply equally to all social media platforms, regardless of who currently owns it or may own it in the future?
That's not what the concern of the bill is, and it's completely transparent. Just read the first 2 pages of the bill, and you can see the concern is in the words of the bill, a foreign adversary, and their ability to sabotage or subversion of the design, integrity, manufacturing, production, distribution, installation, operation, or maintenance of information and communications technology products and services in the United States. It's quite simple. The US and China don't get along. It's never been about privacy nor internal to the US security. It's very openly about cross-Pacific adversaries. Only meta-tech commentators have tried to apply some weird narrative of privacy.
The real concerns in order of importance are: this is a way of getting memes to the masses that we, the US political establishment, can't fully control. Meta and others are getting their asses kicked revenue-wise by TikTok. Like any business, they'd use anything they could to fight back. Turns out they can use China fear-mongering, so they are. Added, believe it or not, there's nationalistic pride here. There is a reluctance to admit that an app from the other side, China, is more appealing to the masses than our social media apps. Surprising then that we don't ban Hondas and Toyotas, even though they're far superior to American cars, but at least they're made by Asians who are allies, I guess. No matter that banning an app is completely against the principles we claim, such as freedom for individuals, competition in a free market, and freedom of information.
You are also ignoring the fact that China does not allow our social media companies to operate in their jurisdiction. So part of this is a sense of fairness. Why do they get to operate here if we can't operate there?
Because open markets and free speech are national values, not tit-for-tat teenage diplomatic drama. We're supposed to be better than that.
But it's not open markets if one partner blocks all access to its own market. In what other trade context would this scenario be acceptable? And how does giving access to an authoritarian regime, famous for controlling speech, promote free speech?
Consumer choice is unequivocally good. Besides, the problem is already solvable. People could simply stop using TikTok if they agreed that its disadvantages outweigh its benefits. No one is forcing them. This is a vote with your feet issue, plain and simple.
When the memes involve destroying the school bathrooms and stealing cars, it's probably worth considering what control is had over it.
China has banned nearly all U.S. social networks already, so is this really surprising given the current status quo?
What I don't get is why we didn't pursue something in the WTO years ago. China doesn't allow FB, Insta, Twitter, etc. to operate in its market, but its companies can provide such a service to U.S. customers. Is that not protectionism? If we're afraid that China will use TikTok to push their propaganda in the U.S., we should be appropriately concerned that banning a platform to stop targeted speech is in conflict with our own norms around free speech. but instead insisting that TikTok can only operate in the US, if FB Snap Twitter can operate in China on equal terms, seems like it would be more in line with our rhetoric around wanting a rules-based international order, and freedom of both trade and speech under most circumstances. If Western social media companies were able to offer their services in China, their fear of our propaganda would be much worse than our fear of theirs.
I feel like they could have done this by creating a bill saying that US social media companies must be given the same access and freedoms to the Chinese market as TikTok has to ours. It would put the onus back on the CCP. They would never allow it. And they would get TikTok banned in the US without being the ones to directly ban it. I am sure someone smarter than I can tell me why this is not a viable strategy.
This bill is so awful it cannot be allowed to pass. It reminds me of the Patriot Act.
It's much worse than the Patriot Act. This bill is absolutely horrific. And calling it a bill to ban TikTok is extremely disingenuous, as it egregiously goes well beyond that.
This bill is absolutely horrific. In what way? Explain that, and let readers decide if it is horrific.
In what way? Explain that, and let readers decide if it is horrific. The bill allows the Secretary of Commerce to unilaterally ban products associated with countries of their choosing, with a 20-year prison sentence for any US citizen who attempts to use a VPN to circumvent the access ban.
Why? It seems focused on only applications, products from a few countries of concern.
I heard on a podcast yesterday a suggestion that the reason the intelligence community doesn't like TikTok is that, unlike with Twitter, Meta, Google, Apple, Amazon, etc., they can't just hand a warrant over to ByteDance to get the data they want. If there's one thing the intelligence community hates, it's not getting the data they want. Back in the previous administration, I figured this was all a temper tantrum being thrown by an executive who got embarrassed when outsmarted by a bunch of kids. It may have started like that, but somehow in DC everyone's been convinced of the danger a foreign-owned social media network poses. I'm still not sure I get it.